Welcome to Breathe California TV. I'm Terry Trumbull, a volunteer. We're going to be talking with Rhonda Davis of Our City Forest. She needs volunteers too. So give either one of us a call at the website, and we're happy to have your assistance. So Rhonda is the executive director of Our City Forest, and I can't overemphasize all the benefits that come from having more trees. And Rhonda's going to explain to us in about 30 seconds how Our City Forest does that. So we'll be back in 30 seconds.
My name is Rene Montez. I've been using the CPAP machine, I would guess 10 years. I got so accustomed to it, I don't go anywhere without it. I take it with me everywhere. From the moment I put it on, I thought it was the greatest thing because the breathing was a lot easier, and after using it for a couple nights, I felt a lot of energy. Breathe California is fabulous.
Welcome back. This is Breathe California TV. Our guest today is Rhonda Davis of Our City Forest. Welcome.
Hi, Terry.
So what in the heck does Our City Forest do? I understand it has something to do with trees.
You're right. So Our City Forest started back in the early 90s in partnership with the city of San Jose, basically to be able to provide trees and services and opportunities for residents to be involved in the urban forest. And so since then to now, we've tried to keep our programs relevant and user-friendly. So we have our planting program, as always, tree care and education, as always, volunteer opportunities and training. About 8 years ago, or 13 years ago rather, we started our Green Jobs program for AmeriCorps folks that want to give themselves for a whole year working in the city of San Jose. And we also have an urban forest education center that we're building, and then a nursery where we cultivate trees. And one of the services we provide that is a little bit invisible is the fact that we do a lot of fundraising so that we can pay for the programs and services, obviously, even though we're basically here to provide a core city service.
Well, Rhonda, I can't emphasize how important it is for nonprofits to get contributions, because basically you don't get to do anything unless you've got a monetary source.
Right. We really appreciate private donations. I think because of the public works nature of what we do, we're very lucky to be able to go after state urban forestry grants. And then we have the support of both the city and the county because we are providing, again, what is often considered to be essential government services. And so we're lucky in that regard. But like I said, we always appreciate donations because we do have a lot of unfunded programs that are completely dependent on those individual donations.
Well, you know me well enough that I raised an example that got me upset with trees in San Jose. 23 years ago, I became a professor at San Jose State, and my parking lot was 3 blocks off campus. And the sidewalk every 15 feet or so had a blank area, just a patch of dirt. And I was suspicious that originally was trees. So one of the things that people don't recognize is we don't just throw trees down and they go like crazy on their own. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. Actually, in cities, planting trees requires a lot of human intervention, so especially stewardship. So planting trees is the easy part, and the more challenging part and costly part is developing the projects to make sure that they're legal and selecting the right species and making sure the trees are high quality, to arrange all the site preparation, logistics, to make sure you're not conflicting with overhead or underground infrastructure. So, and then that's the before part. And then after the planting, it's we're talking essential, the critical need to steward, water the tree for at least 3 years so that it's successfully established. So those are the really more challenging parts. Planting the tree is the quickest part and the easiest part because we have, and the most fun part, because we do have thousands of volunteers that help us every year, and that are very carefully coached and supported by our AmeriCorps service members. So we have a train the trainer model anyway that keeps costs low. But yeah, so it's not as easy. Urban forestry isn't as easy, say, as rural forestry. So like what I like to think of is you hear a lot about campaigns, 1 million trees going to be planted in a year, and well, that really could not happen in a city because financially, for one thing, it would be impossible, and most of those trees would end up dead. But I think what it generally means is that you get a helicopter and you put like 1 million seedlings aboard, and then you let them out over the forest and you pray for rain. And that would be like 1 million tree campaign, right? For a bank or anybody who wanted to say they planted 1 million trees. But in the city, you don't plant seedlings. You have to plant 15-gallon trees. So there's quite substantial, they take a long time to grow to even get to that size. A lot of love, care, and cost. So urban forestry is a completely different thing, and you might have to cut cement, you might have to auger, you have to stake a 15-gallon tree, and to get it off to a good start. So you might have to get a permit. So it's just a whole different scene than the other scenario in the rural forest.
Wouldn't it be easier just to train your staff in rain dances?
Yes, I think you're probably right.
Well, your point is really reinforced by a current situation. The Mercury News today has an article sort of chastising water districts for not having adopted conservation and other programs, because we have to recognize we're in drought conditions now. I took California geography in college, and they described most of the state, including where we live, as desert. We may not think of it in Santa Clara County as desert, but the level of rain we get is very definitely typical of deserts.
Well, I can't speak to any other water district, but let me give a little shout out to the Santa Clara Valley Water District, or Valley Water, as I think their name is now. They actually support our rain garden program that really would not exist without their sponsorship. So we have, it's called Lawn Busters, and we convert yards to native gardens that in just the short amount of time that we've run this program, well, it's been 5 years, but we already exceed saving like 5 million gallons of water every year. And it's quite more than that now. I just haven't heard what the statistic is recently, but they, and we have a do-it-yourself program as well that they are going to be funding this coming year. So I see this as, a very clear, you have to it takes leadership to make these decisions because it isn't always popular. But what they're doing is saying we want to promote more sustainable landscaping in the San Jose area, even if it means using less water, which we depend on for, revenue. And so I'm obviously we're not going to change the world overnight, but I do think we're having an impact on teaching people what sustainable landscaping looks like, and the idea of removing lawns, which are a total waste of water and are not appropriate for our climate. So I just wanted to mention that in terms of what something really positive that Valley Water is doing right now, and it has been doing for several years, actually.
Well, let's just expand on what you said. The notion of having a lawn originates with English and British settlers coming to our country, and it kind of becoming a model. But it's an anachronism because it's carried over from a country where it rains quite frequently.
Exactly.
And so replacing lawns and getting trees in, I would guess you're saying, is a big water saver.
Exactly. And I like to say too that every tree in and of itself is a drought tolerant garden because the canopy covers a good sized area, and it does so much in the same way that shrubs do. But the shrubs and vegetation, I should point out, we consider that also a very important part of the urban forest. They need each other, they support each other, and they all address climate change. So these are very important environmental strategies and deserve the support of our local leadership.
So when you and I've talked, you mention over and over again AmeriCorps. So what in the world is that, and why is it important to your program?
Well, the first about 15 years of our program, we did plant, 2,000 trees a year, regardless, and because the city was so barren, it wasn't difficult to find these sites that needed massive numbers of trees, and we were able to fund that through our state grants. And so, but there came a time when we realized, gee, we're the state's third largest city, and the demand for what we're doing continues. And our volunteers were really, we were using their trucks. We didn't even have a fleet for quite a while. And we knew that a good urban forestry program can't be just about planting trees. It has to be about making sure that they're stewarded, that the people that are stewarding them are being supported and followed up with. And it has to have education and training, and our volunteers, in order to have meaningful experiences, need to have sufficient training. And there were just a lot of aspects. And plus we were having trouble getting drought tolerant trees and healthy species and healthy trees from our wholesalers for years. So there were all these other programs we knew that we needed to do if San Jose was going to have an urban forestry program it could be proud of. And so the answer to that was we needed more full-time people. And we certainly didn't have, we only had a staff of 4, and that just was not anywhere near our counterpart organizations in other cities. And so we actually became the first AmeriCorps urban forestry program in the country, and it's kind of a big deal. And so AmeriCorps has a lot of different kinds of programs, but ours is very unique in that we are team-based. So we're not just a hub where we bring in people and send them out and let everyone else foot the bill for whatever they're doing. In our case, they're in-house, and so I have to have staff that can train them. So they all become urban forestry specialists. And so we have 30 full-time AmeriCorps members now, and they work full-time serving our city for $20,000 a year, and they try to live in Silicon Valley on $20,000 a year, and they somehow do it For many
You
years,
must be robbing banks.
no, they are not. For many years, they only got 15,000. And we were really losing because there's a lot of AmeriCorps members around, programs around that, were getting candidates because they could pay 20,000 a year, because the grant only pays about a third of the cost for us to run this program. So for us to be able to keep this program, we have to raise about 2/3 of the cost of having them. And that's a lot of money. And so, and they, it's required that they have health insurance and, workers' comp insurance and all that good stuff. And so, it's there's a lot of out of pocket costs. But the great thing about the program is they're just exceptional individuals that come to us, and they help us to create a better balance in our programs and services, and a healthier, organization in terms of what we're doing for urban forestry. So we have a tree planting team, we have a nursery team, tree care team, education and outreach team, and together, we are providing these critical services for urban forestry to residents. And financially, it's a model, like I mentioned, train the trainer. So my staff trains the AmeriCorps members, and the AmeriCorps members train the volunteers and coach the volunteers and support the residents with all their different requests throughout the community. And because we plant on any land, school, wherever we can find funding to fund a project. It doesn't have to be city property. It doesn't have to be, but it could be, or we've planted about every city facility you could think of through these state grants, but also all the school districts throughout San Jose, over 200 schools. And I think about 24 school districts have received trees from us. So I like this idea that we could transcend boundaries of property ownership, so people know that there's just this one place, there's this hub that they can come to, and if there are resources available, we can serve them. And it might be that the resources are even coming from that community, that we can say, yeah, as a matter of fact, the Rotary Club in your area is sponsoring X number of trees, and we can match you up with that. So that the AmeriCorps program anyway is been a tremendous boost to our ability to have a greater capacity to serve.
Well, just to get very basic, AmeriCorps is a federal government program.
Yes.
And my recollection is it got started under President Obama when we were in a pretty serious economic state, not at all unlike where we are now.
It actually goes back further than that. It goes back to just before Clinton. And we actually received a Presidential Service Award from President Clinton. So it is a big, but that wasn't, we didn't have our AmeriCorps program then. That's right. But we got an award, just our nonprofit did. So I mixed the two things up. But anyway, it goes back quite a ways. So AmeriCorps is, the simplest way to look at it is a domestic Peace Corps.
Sounds good. So we're going to be talking with Rhonda Berry further about our city forest programs, but we're going to take a 30-second break now for a public service message.
The different therapeutic methods that we can help our very low socioeconomic status clients who have no alternatives, no anything, and there's still about 15 different resources we got out of this, that if you have no resources, no service connection, you can still get aid.
That they are connected, one encourages the other, and that the process of change from backing off from the tobacco is the same as backing off from any other addictive drug.
Everyone can benefit from this training that we just were offered today. I would not take it back.
Thank you for sticking with us. We're talking about our city forest. Our service area of this program is San Jose and Campbell. I know you're in San Jose. Are you in Campbell as well?
You know, we actually serve throughout the county. And the only thing that prevents us from doing more throughout the county is just funding. But we were created to help San Jose and surrounds, in and around San Jose. Um, and just to stay, the county now is a very substantial partner. So we are able to serve throughout the county. And we're very excited about that. We have been working in Milpitas in years past. Sunnyvale, we have a small partnership now in Sunnyvale. Morgan Hill is interested in working with us. We've done for climate change grant, once in a while, a grant that we get. Almost always, it's just San Jose that has benefited from our grants, but once in a while, there'll be a little piece somewhere, another area that's eligible. And an example of that would be our greenhouse gas grant, where we had some census tracts in Morgan Hill and Gilroy that were eligible. And sometimes we've had Santa Clara be eligible because it's so close to San Jose. So we were able, the state grant would, so we've been able to serve these other communities in that way. Not to a huge degree, but it's been great because, again, we can transcend those borders. And even though 99% of the work we've done has been in the city of San Jose.
So a lot of government funding programs require a match where somebody on the outside gives money to go along with theirs. Is that true for AmeriCorps?
It's painfully true because for the AmeriCorps grant, the grant itself pays for about a third of the cost of hosting the AmeriCorps members. So I have to be able to raise money from the city, the state, from private donations to match that federal grant. And that doesn't even include the money needed to actually fund the projects that they're going to work on, and the trucks and the capital expenses that urban forestry requires. So that's in addition to the other funding. So urban forestry, make no bones about it, it's expensive. It's public works. It isn't planting little seedlings. It's a big deal, and it impacts the infrastructure, and it's creating long-term changes to the landscape, and it requires a lot of oversight and a lot of insurance and a lot of training. It's not quite like picking up litter or trash. There's a lot of different dimensions to it, and that's why I say we're lucky to be able to get these government, and which is why it is primarily government funded. But for us, and I think the city of San Jose would totally agree that they've been very lucky for us to be able to go out and bring in all this outside funding from the feds and the state and from the water district and these different entities that are putting their money in San Jose. They're putting their money to help make San Jose a greener, healthier place to live. And that's pretty cool.
Well, our first 20 minutes of this show, we've kind of taken for granted about trees. So why are they so important? I suspect that you could talk for another half hour on that.
Yeah, that's like a whole nother show, Terry. I don't know, but I'll try to squeeze something in. Well, I think what we are seeing now, obviously, in many of the years, 28 years that our city forest has been serving our community, it really wasn't as trendy to plant trees. It wasn't as sexy to plant trees. And so it's made it even harder, I think, to kind of be sustainable in the work that we do. But you would have to agree that more recently, in just the last few years, it's just been a tremendous amount of attention put on to shade trees in cities, and it's showing the value that they have to fight climate change. So, I would say in just the simplest terms, I mean, we know that the shade canopy in a city lowers a peak summer temperature by about 10 degrees. So that's just with the existing urban forest. And
let me interrupt you because lowering the temperature is amazingly important for the health of people.
Yes.
the hotter the air is in the summer, the more ozone gets created. And that is the worst substance that you can inhale for, it literally dissolves your lungs. So
Exactly.
as you're
Yeah,
about to point out,
right.
all the studies indicate that cities, the more treed they are, both are healthier and have people that feel better about their community.
Absolutely. I mean, there are studies that show reduced crime rates, that show that traffic slows down the more trees there are lining a street. And I'm really big on the health benefits because they really don't get enough attention. And you've mentioned one, and the other thing is that every tree is an air filter. It's just a significant air filter. If you ever wondered, why your tires go bald or what that means, it means that the tires are literally floating in the air. You just can't see the little tiny particles that used to be tires. And so people are inhaling those particulates. That's what particulate matter is. I'm sure I'm talking to people that already know all this, but the ability of a tree, of a shade tree, to filter that so that our children and ourselves don't have to breathe those particulates that actually endanger us and cause asthma, lung disease, cancer, heart conditions. It's a tremendous issue. And you don't ever want your kids to be playing outside if they're not around shade trees. As you don't want to jog along a street that doesn't have shade trees. You don't want to bicycle along a street that doesn't have shade trees. That's how significantly different barren, the health, impact of a barren street versus a canopied street. So we're really proud that we have fully canopied, I mean, neighborhoods in every zip code in the city, many streets, and like I said, many schools where I'm happy. For schools, there's another health benefit because children at a young age is when they're most vulnerable to being exposed to sun, which eventually develops into skin cancer when they're older. And so it's amazing to find these super, large expanses of asphalt and cement at schools, in school grounds, and how shade trees can create the kind of environment that kids need. And they also learn, better when they have a nicer environment to learn in. So I like I said, I have to also add the fact that every tree is also a stormwater manager. So we're looking at a tremendous value, economic value that can be literally calculated and tied to shade trees in what they do for us in terms of that utility. They are like a stormwater plant, each one of them. They take all that stormwater, they slow it down, and so in effect they're managing the stormwater for us so that it doesn't just slam down into our storm drains and create flooding. That's another huge benefit. And I haven't even talked about wildlife habitat and the fact that we need moisture in the air, which trees bring us, and other vegetation. So again, that's another show, Terry.
We've run out of time. And so as you suggested earlier, we definitely need to drag you back again to talk about all this. So thank you very much. And I hope our audience considers giving to our city forest. So we'll have another show for you next week on some great programs like our city forests, which have all sorts of good side effects as well as giving us cleaner air. See you then.